Welcome back to the Horses Now podcast, your go-to source for everything in the world of horse racing. I'm your host, Teague Ridge. As always, I'm joined by Kenny McPeek. Kenny, we got a couple pretty awesome guests today. We're joined by Brian and Colby Hernandez. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Good, and yourself?
Great, and yourself.
So thank you guys for being here. All right, Kenny, let's, as we always start here, give us a little update. Where you stand, what's going on? I know you're dealing with the hurricane coming right now.
Yes.
So just give us a little bit of overview of what's happening in your world.
First of all, thank you to the brother Hernandez is here.
That's right.
My brother's Osborne, but it's brother.
That's right.
Close enough. They've done a great job for me, so we're excited about them answering questions about whips and counting whip hits and counting how to ride, and that's certainly their department. I hate answering questions that they know the answer.
Well, we're going to ask Brian about his whip find, but we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah, and then yes, we are very worried about the hurricane coming in and out of South Florida or Middle Florida. It's actually going to run right over our farm, Silverleaf Hills Training Center, and I was just on the phone with the staff down there, and they have got to dig in. Right now, we're batting down hatches and putting things. We're making sure everything's inside, nothing loose. And fortunately, that barn or the barns on the property, anybody that's never seen it, it's a beautiful piece of land. But they've suffered a few hurricanes over its 25 years, and they've never had anything but lost shingles. So
they've been able to maintain pretty well.
Let's hopefully that's the way, because we've got probably anywhere from $6, $8, $10 million worth of young horses down there right now. So it's a little trepidation.
I guarantee it. All right, guys. Brian, Colby, let's start with you guys. Let's give me a little bit of background on how you even got started in the horse racing industry. Brian, let's start with you.
It kind of goes in both our cases, where we grew up on the backside of Evangeline Downs and Delta Downs. Our dad rode down there for 20-something years, and just from being a very young kid, we just always grew up on the backside, and it was just part of life that it was all we knew, that you'd get up in the mornings at 5 a.m. and go to the track with Dad and watch him train horses, and it was just all we knew, really.
Colby, did you ever have any aspirations to do anything else, or did you always want to be a jockey?
No, just from the 8 years old, we go to the track with my dad on summers, mucking stalls, started galloping horse at 14 years old at the farm, and that's about it. That's all I know.
So I saw where your dad had over 1,300 wins, and when I saw that number, I was like, man, that's crazy. Now, both of you guys have surpassed him by a ton. Did you ever think that would have been the case?
No, when you're a young kid, you always have aspirations of being a jockey and doing the best you can. But when you're growing up down there in Louisiana, and back in that time frame as well, we didn't have the simulcasting, so we didn't get to watch the races like you do nowadays, where you just put it on your phone and watch them from all over the country. So you idolized those guys down there in Louisiana, and respected them, and you just wanted to be like them. And then to be able to start a career and take it to the level that I have, it's been just magical.
You didn't have the Horses Now app back in those days. That's right, Kenny. Right? And if you don't have the Horses Now app, please go get it. Shameless plug. Kenny, you worked with a lot of jockeys, right? Obviously, including Brian and Colby here. What makes these guys different?
Well, I've said all along, I think it's the Louisiana culture. I think they're raised around horses, and they're very comfortable on horseback, and that's 9/10 of it. You get riders nowadays that don't learn until a little bit later in life, and it's just second nature to them. The list of Louisiana riders that I've ridden over my career probably dwarfs the rest. I mean, probably 70-80% of the riders I've ever ridden were Louisiana-based riders, and just got a real. They've got a knack for it.
Yeah.
It's part of their world, and they love doing it. And I think, and I'm hopeful that continues. I don't know what the future holds for Louisiana racing, but they're pretty active still between Evangeline Downs and Delta Downs. And Louisiana racing as a whole, people love the sport down there, and I think you'll see more young riders coming out of there in the future.
You've always said you love the Cajun riders. Yeah. There's a couple of them right here.
Something about it.
All right, so what's the sibling dynamic? Do you guys ever ride in the same race against each other? I mean, have you guys ever trying to beat each other?
Oh, yes, every single time.
So you guys are riding a lot against each other, huh?
We ride a lot against each other, and like you said, you're out there to do a job, and you want to win every time you go out there.
Yeah.
But it also makes it fun now too, because we're working together a lot, and we're getting on a lot of young horses over for Kenny, and it's been a lot of fun to work with Colby, especially this year, because we've like I said, we've worked a lot of horses there at Kenny's, and just to be able to see the 2-year-olds, watch them develop and watch them come to and show which ones kind of rise to the top. It's been a fun year.
Well, speaking of rise to the top, you guys have had a couple of those here lately. Colby, I'm going to ask you first. How did you feel when Brian won the Derby?
It was an awesome feeling. Just so proud of him, happy for him. Kenny and Brian do so well together.
Are you anxious to get your shot?
Yes, I am.
I'll guarantee it, man. All right, Brian, you got to take me to that mountaintop there. I mean, obviously for me, being from Louisville, Kentucky, I know the Oaks, I know the Derby. You know, it's ingrained in me. How was that feeling? Is that the race that you growing up in Louisiana? Is that it? Is that the mountaintop?
Yeah, I mean, when you compete in the Derby, and you know, growing up in the sport, you always dream of just riding the Derby. So to get the chance to actually go out there and win it, it's very fulfilling, and it's just one of those. It's one of those deals that I don't think you'll ever fully grasp, that you actually were able to win the Kentucky Derby. I've asked guys that have done it in the past, I'm like, when does it actually settle in? And
right.
Like, it never really does. You kind of enjoy the moment, and that's the thing, you know. It's winning the Derby. I've been fortunate enough to win a lot of big races through my career, and, you know, won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and you thought that was kind of the pinnacle of the sport. Yeah. But to win the Derby, that's a different ball game. You know, nowadays, you walk around now and everybody's like, well, you're the Kentucky Derby.
You're the guy.
And then to top it off, to win the Oaks and Derby in the same year.
Yeah,
you know, that's
back-to-back days.
Yeah.
So what's next? What is the next big achievement?
I mean, you know, you want to win the Derby again. But up until that weekend, you know, riding-wise, I never really thought about the Hall of Fame. But now with the resume that we've kind of achieved over this year, you know, you start thinking about the Hall of Fame and wanting to kind of work your way into that.
Well, you're tracking there, man. I've got some stats here. Kenny, he's tracking to that Hall of Fame.
He's headed there.
He's headed there for sure. Now, what about the Triple Crown? Is that something that would be pretty cool, I would assume?
Yeah, definitely. You know, especially after winning the Derby, you know how hard it is. Now we understand how hard it is to win the Derby, and then to go with Mystic Dan like we did through all 3 Triple Crown races, it just shows how incredibly difficult and
it is,
and
right.
what a special horse it'll take to try to win the Triple Crown.
All right, let's talk about the Derby specifically here. Kenny, what instructions did you give Brian before he went out there on Mystic Dan?
Well, I think when we drew the 3-hole, there wasn't a whole lot to discuss, and typically I don't give him much in-depth instructions, but I made a decision with that horse on Wednesday prior to the race. Brian came over and got on him, and I said, pop him out of the gate. Let's ask him to leave there, and I do think that was a difference maker, because when we freshened his mind up to leave the gate swift, then I think it gave the horse the notion, okay, let's, you know, that Saturday was, he essentially was doing the same thing. But so Brian knew what I was thinking after he jumped him out of the gate on Wednesday. That we needed to ask him to leave there. You didn't want to be falling back and getting back in the pack. But I also kind of, I don't remember if we discussed it or not, but live and die by the rail. Don't worry about it. You get stopped, fine. But Brian, he found his way through, and it was all the difference. I mean, that hole it was closing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he got in there before it closed, and I do think that was all the difference. And I don't give him in-depth instructions typically. I let him ride to. I've said on this show before, you don't tell Picasso or Rembrandt how to paint. You hand him a brush and canvas. Go do your thing, and he does that well.
What do you guys prefer? Do you prefer a trainer that kind of lets you do your thing? Do you prefer a trainer that gives you a lot of instructions? What would you guys prefer when you're riding?
I know in my case, I prefer that, like Kenny style, where, you know, we go into there prepared as best as we can, and we know the horses. So if he kind of lets me sit back and do my homework, and I don't have to worry about going out there, and if things don't work out like we envisioned them to come back and have to answer a whole lot of questions, it just makes it a lot easier, and it puts a lot more confidence in you, knowing that you're going in there with your own game plan, and you're not in the back of your mind having to worry about, well, I didn't follow exactly what this guy wanted me to do. So
sure.
He's going to get mad. And that. It just makes it for a whole lot easier job.
Colby, would you echo that?
Yes, I'd say exact same thing Brian would say. Just you kind of both want to be on the same page, but also you kind of want to ride your own race because you never know what happens when you leave the gates.
So what's the difference between you two? What makes one of you guys better than the other? Or you guys have a lot of the same traits? I mean, obviously the same pedigree, but do you guys have a different style at all? Or do you guys kind of try to do the same thing? What's different between your all's riding styles?
It's just I've been fortunate enough to where I've been here in Kentucky for like 20 years. So I kind of got a jump on him business-wise. And we kind of have the same riding style, I believe. He's in the progress right now where he's just kind of gaining business and just getting people to trust him with better horses. And that's what it all boils down to is you need the stock behind you. You can be the best jockey in the world, but if you don't have the horsepower in your corner, there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah. Colby, how would you answer that?
I'd say the same thing as him.
Yeah.
Just kind of moved up here about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And then
you said you moved here around COVID time.
Yes, around COVID time, and just starting to get things going, rolling along now.
Makes sense. Who's the guy, Kenny? We talked about this jockey who his secret was being around good horses.
Pat Day.
Was it Pat Day?
Oh, Pat Day. Yeah. I mean, and of course, a lot. Oh, you were talking about Jacinto Vasquez.
That's it. You've told that story.
When he was a young trainer or young jockey, yes. How he circled the best trainers' barns until he finally got in.
Yeah.
And didn't consider himself a great rider, but he said he kept himself around really good horses. But I want to interject about the difference between the two.
Okay, please. I was going to ask you that.
I do think there's a big difference.
Okay.
And you and I talked about it a little bit, Colby. Brian. Brian's style of riding is patience and rhythm, and I think he's probably got as good a hands on a horse as anybody I've ever seen in the world. And he's not a physical rider in the sense that he doesn't try to make something happen. And I think racehorses are like that. And I'm a rhythm trainer in that I want my horses to break, settle, get in rhythm, and then make one run. Because we teach them the repetition of the 3/8 quarter pole to the wire.
Sure.
3/8 quarter pole to the wire. So a horse is running that last quarter is going to be their fastest quarter. But when you're back in the pack and a horse is maybe going to have to work through traffic, it's problematic. I think that Brian finds his way. He never checks a horse. Rarely does he ever check a horse, unless somebody puts him into the rail. All right, and he has.
What do you mean by check a horse?
Brian?
When you check a horse is when you say you run up into a spot there's no room there, so then you're forced to check. And when you do that,
pull up a little bit?
You pull up.
Okay.
When you pull up a little, it just breaks all their momentum.
You want to run up on heels.
Yeah.
Got it.
You run up on heels, you clip and go down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Colby, I think, what's the age difference?
3 years.
Okay. I think Colby's ridden more, and don't take this wrong. I think you've ridden more cheaper horses earlier in your career, and your mindset is trying to make them do something. And you probably rode for more quarter horse Louisiana type trainers who were thinking sprinters, and they're good at it, but they're asking you to do something, and your mind is still in that, And I've said to you Sunday, I said after the second race, I think it was, no, don't you need to use hands, elbows. Just get down and I want you thinking more like Brian thinks on a horse, because a good horse will take you there, and a good horse will extend himself. Now you're going to win some races doing what you're doing, but you're also going to lose them sometimes because you might have moved a horse too soon, or that's not really their style. And look, we've been working together less time than Brian and I have. We're pushing decade practically. That's and right. So I'm going to continue to, okay, you don't have to ride into the turn. Let the horse take you there. And then maybe in the middle of the turn, if you feel like you're too far back, then ease in, ask. But then quarter pole the wire is really, if you can wait that long, if a horse takes you to the quarter pole and you haven't moved yet, you're going to win the race.
Yeah. 90% of the time, you're going to win.
And neither one of them I've ever yelled at. Have we ever yelled at you?
No.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
We've been riding, 10 years for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, hey, and Brian and I rarely, we might talk about a little bit before and a little bit after, and more than anything we're talking about, is that horse good enough?
Right.
Or did I run, like I ran a short horse on Sunday that Colby rode, and that horse just wasn't fit. And actually, I was upset at myself and my team that we did not have that horse fit. And actually, before the race, I mentioned to my assistant, this horse isn't ready. You can look at him and he's not ready. So that falls on me. But you know that now, and we've got to come back and give that horse 2 or 3 5/8. So it's all a process. And then the one horse that ran second, he's any kind of horse.
He's a good horse.
Yes.
Yeah. You want Brian to have that one back?
No.
Our listeners are getting some real-time mentoring here. It's pretty cool. And our listeners they might hear Sonny here in the background too. Kenny takes Sonny with him everywhere. Now, I'll tell you what, man, you look at these stats. So Brian to date has 2,614 wins, and Colby has 2,462 wins. So they both know how to get across that finish line.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's pretty darn awesome. All right, before I get too far away from the Derby, I've got to ask you, was there a game plan? Did you study other Derby races? Did you study other jockeys, how they've won? Obviously, knowing that you had that third hole, did you study how to get through on the rail? Was that something that you had thought about and put any prep into?
Yeah, the Derby was about a 2-week game plan process. Really, you know, I watched prior derbies. Calvin Burrell, he's won 3 derbies. I watched all 3 of his derbies, and I watched the Mind That Bear Derby first, and I was like, you know what, he's going to be a little too far back. That race, he was too far back. I needed to find another one. So then I watched the Super Saver.
Yeah.
When he won Super Saver, he came out the 4-hole that day.
Yeah.
And he kind of did the same thing that I did to Dornack with him coming out the 4-hole that day. He had the favorite Baffert's horse in the 1 hole, and second jump he hurried up and outbroke him and took his spot. So with Kenny sending Mystic Dan over to the gate on the Wednesday,
right,
that was in the back of my mind as well. I was like, well, you know what, we know he's going to leave there sharply. So if he leaves there sharply and outbreaks Dornack that first jump, we're just going to go ahead and get to the rail as quick as possible. And I wanted Dornack behind me, because that was going to be one less horse that I was going to have to worry about getting through on. And then once we did that and we crossed under the wire the first time, and I looked up and seen it was a Track Phantom, the horse I was going to be following. Mm-hmm. I was pretty confident in myself that I was able to just the beautiful thing about the Derby as well was, if you go back and watch it, we were in this little pocket down on the rail all by ourselves. Mm-hmm. And Mystic Dan, that's another testament. He just got in a nice rhythm and just cruise. And there was never any doubt that if a gap opened up, that you were going to make it. We were going to shoot through, and that was the thing. You know, it was tight, but it was a live or die moment. You know, it's get through and get the jump on the deep closers, and it worked out in our favor. All
right, I got so many questions we got to get here, guys. All right, so is there ever? I would imagine. I mean, obviously, when you guys ride against each other, it's friendly, I would assume. But is there ever times where it's not friendly between jockeys? I mean, you guys are wanting to win, obviously, right? Is there times where it gets a little dirty out there?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely times. But then at the same time, riding-wise, you want to be respectful to everyone out there as well. You don't want to have that target on your back that you're going to shut people off. And you know, when you're on a dead horse, sometimes you kind of get out the way to let the guy through, because in next week you might be that guy that needs room. So you want that same favor from the same. But at the same time, you have to be smart enough to know what you have under you and know what's around you.
When you guys get back to the jockey room, is there any words exchanged?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, probably 3 times a day, you know, you'll get a guy that's mad at another guy, and they'll be screaming at each other. And it's a high-intensity sport, you know, and we're racing at 40 miles an hour within inches of each other. So things happen, and sometimes they're in your control, and sometimes they're out your control. And once you've done it long enough, you know when a guy intentionally does things and doesn't.
Is there a jockey out there that's just dirty you guys don't like?
Yeah, there's certain guys out there.
There's guys, right, we don't get along with?
There's guys, you know, that you don't want to be around that guy, because there's one guy in particular that he doesn't care about himself out there. You know, he'll drop himself, so you really think he's going to care about the guy around him?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Brian's a gentleman jockey.
You could tell.
Yeah.
You could tell. You know,
and I've ridden some guys that were borderline nasty.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean,
give me a name. Give me somebody.
Well, I mean, you know, look, I rode Shane Sellers for years.
Right.
Shane Sellers was mean on horseback. I mean, but that was a good thing. He was a great rider.
Yeah, intense.
I mean, but he was intense, and he'd fight coming off a horse. And I saddled 2 horses at Aqueduct a couple weeks ago, and coming off. One rider on Manny Franco came in on Kendrick Carmouche, who was on my horse.
Okay.
And it looked like he was coming to fist fight coming off the racetrack, and Franco laid right into him and pushed him down, from like the 3-path in, and he didn't have position. And thinking Kentucky, they would have probably looked at that,
sure,
called that, but New York stewards didn't do anything. And Kendrick actually called me. Actually, he couldn't even talk to me because he was getting ready to fight.
Wow.
Yeah, and Kendrick's Cajun rider.
Yeah.
And he's probably somewhere in between Shane and Brian because Kendrick's pretty chill most of the time, but he was madder than a wet hen coming off that day.
I bet.
Yeah, but sometimes, like, I think the New York riders definitely are more aggressive. Remember the fight that Calvin and Castellano? Castellano's the nicest guy in the world, and Calvin typically was too, and they actually came to blows.
Did they?
On the scale. That was Derby Day.
Breeders' Cup.
Breeders' Cup. I was going to say.
Breeders' Cup Marathon.
And there was a lot of cameras on those boys when that one went down.
Yeah, man, we got to get some cameras in the jockey room and just follow you guys around.
It probably happens in there, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, you don't want to do it. Most of the time, if you're going to do something like that, you don't want to do it out in front of the
public. Right, yeah, you're going to do it behind closed doors.
I don't think Brian raises fists in his life.
No, I try not.
You're not going to fight anybody, Brian?
No.
Yeah. Colby, what about you? You ready?
No, never been in a fight.
Well, okay. Well, that tells me what I need to know then. All right, so are jockeys allowed to bet on the races they're in?
That's a tough question. It's something I've never really looked into.
Have you ever done it?
I've been told in the past you can bet your horses to win, but like when we're up in Saratoga and stuff like that, and we have a day off or whatever, and I'll go out to the races with my wife, and we'll be. Well,
that's different. That's different. You're a fan at that point.
Yeah, riding wise, I've never bet one that I've ridden.
Do you know of has that ever been a thing where jockey's betting on himself or against himself, or it's like shaving points, right?
Yeah, they had the one guy up in, I think he was in Maryland. He was riding, and he opened up a betting account in his own name.
And
he got in trouble. Yeah, he got rolled off.
Yeah, he will.
Everything else. Yeah, I don't remember his name. That was just a couple of years ago.
I don't remember. It's not unusual for the owner of the horse to give a ticket to the jockey.
That makes sense too. It's incentive, right?
Yeah.
I understand
you had
that.
Owners give you tickets.
Yeah, we used to do that. They used to do that a lot in Louisiana.
Yeah,
you'd get a guy when you're in the paddock, and he'd put a $200 win ticket in your and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's incentive. Yeah. Go win, and then you got I get that. That makes perfect sense. All right, now what about cutting weight? That's always been fascinating to me. So what's the amount? How much do you have to weigh to ride properly?
Because I know they add weight. This question.
Hey, I'm not asking Kenny that question. Although we do have a story where Kenny took a Lasix pill and lost a few pounds in a day. But tell me about the weight limit.
Well, you get, I think you get up to 5 pounds over whatever the horse is in with, and then after that, the owner and trainer get the decision if they want to take you off or not. But in order to do the weight, like say your horse is in with 118.
Okay.
So you got to go in, you got to get on the scale, and you got to get on with your saddle, your girt, and your pad.
You got to hold it all.
All your clothes, you got to hold it on. So you got to give yourself like 3 to 4 pounds of.
That makes sense.
Of tack. So you got to weigh in order to do 18, you got to weigh 113, 114 pounds.
Golly, that's got to be hard to do. Are you guys cutting weight constantly?
It just depends. Just like every day, wake up different, but not too bad.
Do you guys work out a lot? I mean, is that something you're saying? You're having to stay fit and really
you work out,
lean.
And then you getting on horses every morning too. I'm fortunate enough to where I can maintain it pretty easily. I normally wake up every morning 114, 115 pounds, so it's pretty easy for me. And then my wife's got the farm out there in Simpsonville, so she keeps me busy out there working. So
well, we can relate to that, right, Kenny? About 115 pounds.
Yeah, when I was 8.
Yeah, right. Same. Golly, I can't even imagine. All right, couple of questions I pulled from the internet here of our listeners and people that are really excited that you guys are going to be on. What are the worst conditions you've ever ridden in?
I want to say this winter at Turfway when it was I think it was 5 degrees that night.
Cold. Okay.
I rode one, the first one, everybody complained. I'm like, I think we could ride a few more. And then I come back this second one I rode. I'm like, and my hands were just frozen. I couldn't even close them. I said, all right, I think it's time to shut it down.
Yeah. Brian, how about you?
I'd agree. At Turfway, one year we flew back from Florida. We spent the winter in Florida, and I went to Spiral Day to ride a bunch for Kenny, and it was like 33 and windy and raining the whole day long.
Oh.
So it was just cold enough to where it wouldn't snow, and it was just rain all day long, and that was
miserable.
That was probably the worst condition.
Did we win anything?
We won with the Princess Warrior.
Princess Warrior, yeah.
Yeah, we won, and.
Yeah. They earn their money.
Oh, I guarantee they earn their money.
Look, they get muddy in the morning and muddy in the afternoon.
So, Brian, I watched a video. I was doing some research, and I watched a video of you talking to somebody. You were covered in mud, like your lips and all over your face, everywhere. Is that normal?
On a muddy racetrack day, it is. You know, you'll get blasted, especially when you're riding a lot of first timers that were kind of teaching them lessons and stuff like that. So you're going to pick up a lot of mud and stuff like that.
Kenny said that before. You like these horses to get some mud in their face. That's part of how you train.
Yeah. I think the first race is a schooling race for us because we do think that they need to learn how to finish, and finish through adversity and pass horses and inside and outside. You know, Colby, that horse Render Judgment that we ran Sunday, that horse, you know, went from the one hole, circled horses, straightened up, ducked inside, came up the rail to finish second. That's a really good experience for that horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that name, gang. Render Judgment.
Render Judgment.
Probably going to be in the Derby next year.
Yeah, you told us another one the last couple of weeks, Handsome Pants, and if we put some money on Handsome Pants, it didn't do me any good.
Handsome Pants came out with a little sore shin. We were actually need to talk to the ownership about that, but yeah, it's nothing major. But he's real tender in that left front shin, and probably gonna have to give him a little bit of a break. But I think it'd do him good. And you know, that was a good race. That horse that won that race.
Yeah, it's a really good horse.
Avenue. Is going to be. That's a stallion. In the making. He was very impressive.
Yeah.
That's probably the fastest futurity I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a good horse.
And I won that race 3 times, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I kind of figured that horse was a little bit different level. All right, guys. So, favorite racetrack to ride at?
Favorite racetrack to ride at? It's probably a tie between Churchill and the Fairgrounds. I love Churchill's great because it's been home now for 20 years. But then being able to go back down to the Fairgrounds in the wintertime, it's a lot of fun because it's fair for the horses. And then on top of that, when we're down there, we get to spend a lot of time with our parents.
Sure.
My dad, dad actually, he's our valet there in the jocks room.
I was getting ready to get to the valet thing. So when you guys go to the Fairgrounds, he does the valet for you. Wow, that's cool.
Mardi Gras parade.
Yeah, Mardi Gras parades.
Yeah.
That's cool. Colby, what's your favorite track?
I'd say Fairgrounds. Fairgrounds and Churchill, same. Just being home back at Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Home with family, and then Churchill just being home up here.
Who has the best jockey room?
Best jocks room? Ooh, that's a tough one. Used to be Keeneland, but that place is gone now. They're rebuilding it, so we're in a trailer right now at Keeneland. You know, the best jocks room probably was Arlington.
Okay.
That was
What made it cool?
It was just really big and open, and Arlington was such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It was every time you went there to ride, it was just walking out of that tunnel there and seeing the massive grandstand.
One of the saddest things we've ever lost in racing was Arlington Park. Was one of the most beautiful racetracks in the world.
Interesting.
Well made, and unfortunately it fell to politics, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, that happens. And listen, the industry itself is very political in a lot of ways. Speaking of political, Brian, let's talk about this whip find incident in the Travers. Obviously, first of all, being able to ride a filly as good as Torpedo Anna's got to be pretty awesome, right? I mean, she's just head and shoulders above these other fillies you've been running against. Take me through the whip find. What happened that day?
Yeah, you know, the whip situation, it's been good for racing, I think, because it's made it safer a little, I believe. You know, you don't have guys just out there whipping away on horses and horses moving 4 and 5 lanes anymore. You know, you got guys that are kind of steering a little more. But then at the same time, it's so cut and dry. You know, why make it 6?
Right.
I can understand if you hit one 7 times and you know you're 5 or 6 lengths back and you got no chance of winning. But like in the Travers case that day, you know, when I got to inside the 8th pole and I had already slapped her 6 times and I had it in the back of my mind. But every time I slapped her.
So you knew you'd hit 6?
Yeah, I knew I had hit 6. But in the back of my mind, every time I'd slapped her, she was going forward. And once we got past the 16th pole and you know, we're within a neck of catching fierceness, I'm like, well, every time I slapped her the other times, she advanced. So I reached back and hit her one more time thinking that I'd be able to nail him on the wire. And unfortunately, we can't.
Well, it got real close, though.
It got close, yeah. And I knew when I came back, walking back to the jockey room, I was like, oh, man, here we go with this. The stewards are going to call. And the stewards called right away, and they go, you know, you slapped her 7 times. I was like, they said, first of all, that was a really good ride. That was big effort. But unfortunately, due to the rules, we have to go ahead and fine you. And I had to serve a day. Yeah.
Big deal? Not big deal?
I mean, it's somewhat of a big deal just because you got to serve the day. You know, it cost us a little business on having to miss out on a day of racing. But at the same time, we're trying to win the Travers. You know,
yeah.
It's not like it was a.
Now, so Kenny, that wouldn't have taken away from Torpedo Anna. So if she would have won, and even though Brian had whipped her 7 times, you still get that win, right? That's not a.
Yeah, we would.
That doesn't take you off the board.
We would have still got the win, but I don't think stewards even noticed. I think somebody on social media noticed, and then they tagged Naira, and then they called him in afterwards. Stewards didn't even notice.
It happens a lot in golf where people see something on TV, like a ball moved or something, and the rules official never even knew it. But
yeah, I think that was kind of odd how that came down. It didn't come down immediately at all. It was several days later.
I gotcha.
But I don't know whose job it is to count every rider in every race, and that's
a tough job.
It's a tough job considering that there's sometimes 12, 14 horses.
Yeah.
But I do like the rule in a sense. I mean, early in my career, Pat Day hardly ever hit a horse. He might be lucky to hit it if he'd hit it twice. And so I do think that a good horse takes a rider there.
Yeah.
You don't have to make him do anything. And, you know, and we are fortunate we handled those kind. But I think on certain circuits, there's probably horses that need more encouragement. But I still think that most horses go out there and try their best.
All right. So, Brian, I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you both this question. Biggest win?
Oh, by far, the Kentucky Derby. Like I said earlier, I was fortunate enough to win the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2012, and I was like, wow, this is the pinnacle of the sport. But then to go back and win the Derby this year, well, the Oaks and then the Derby this year is it's elevated things.
Yeah, winning those back-to-back on separate days has to be just unbelievable.
Yeah, and even like the case with the Oaks, after we won the Oaks, I don't know, by Kenny's case, but like you go to the media room and you do all the media and stuff like that, and you stand there and you're like, wow, this must be what it's like to win the Derby. And then to follow it up the next day
with the Derby,
and you're like, oh no, this is a different ball game. Yeah, this is a whole different atmosphere and different world to see the recognition and just the press. The worldwide press was the wide opening thing.
Oh yeah. Kenny, anybody ever done that before? As a trainer, jockey, duo ever won the Oaks and Derby back to back?
2 other sets of trainers jockeys. Ben Jones did it with is it Eddie Arcaro?
Eddie Arcaro.
Yeah, back in 1952, and then prior to that, I can't remember the trainer.
But it's been a minute.
Yeah, actually, the Fighting Finish.
Yeah,
was the same trainer and jockey that year. But I think the Oaks took pressure off of us.
Sure.
I think we were already on a high after we won the Oaks, and I can remember being in the media room, and they talked about, you know, how do you feel? Do you think Mystic Dan can win tomorrow? And I said, count on it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it just made, you know, we knew we were already on for a good weekend, even if we didn't win the Derby, and we had no pressure and didn't feel any pressure at any point in time.
Colby, biggest win?
I want to say maybe the Brian Station Stake at Keeneland last fall.
Okay.
I think so.
So recently. So both you guys are coming off of big recent wins. I love it. All right. So advice for someone who might be a young jockey or somebody that wants to get in the business, what would you tell them?
Find you a trainer or a farm where you can just go and just show up every day, 7 days a week, show up every morning and just do what they ask you to do. Just be there. And, and that was in our case, both our cases. We started at a young age, mucking stalls and cleaning water buckets and just doing anything we could just to be around the horses. And then it just kind of elevated into eventually getting on horses. I know in my case, when I first started working for Dale Angel, it wasn't just galloping horses. We had 45 horses out at the farm, and there was 3 of us. 2 guys galloped and another guy groomed, and then after we were done galloping, we'd help him groom, and then we had 2 stall cleaners. So total of 5 guys taking care of 45 horses.
Ooh.
And that's all you do. You learn from the ground up.
Oh, heck yeah.
That's probably the best way to get into the industry.
I was kind of curious about that. Is galloping horses, working them on the weekends, do you know the horses that you ride pretty well? Or do you just saddle them and you're just like, all right, I don't even know what I'm getting on today? Or do you typically know what you're riding?
That's the fortunate thing working with Kenny as well. We have all these horses, and he has Colby and I. We're out there every Friday and Saturday mornings, and we're working them from when they come in from the farm from 3/8 up. So we typically know by race day what we have under us and what we can ask them to do and what they're capable of doing.
So like Mystic Day and Torpedo Anna, do you work them out or do other jockeys work them out?
It just depends. Like this winter we had both of them down there at the fairgrounds, and a couple times we worked them against each other. So I'd work Mystic Dan, and we had another guy, David Cohen. He worked Torpedo Anna a few times, and we worked them together. And then she beat him up pretty good one morning, and Kenny goes, all right, we might have to separate them now.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, she made him huff and puff. They got each other fit for both races. I mean, or all winter they were a really good match. But yeah, at some point I had to separate them. I'm unique at this stage in my career, and I'm able to do that with Brian and Colby because of the stage of my career I'm in.
Right.
When I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I had owners that wanted big name rider, and as a young trainer with a small outfit, I would struggle getting, have to sit behind other bigger trainers to get a Pat Day or a Jerry Bailey or a lot of the leading riders. And today I don't get enamored with all that. I can remember, I mean, it is horse racing, it's not jockey racing, but I think we're a better outfit, and I'm a better trainer when we have a team that's, you get the continuity of them getting to know the horses. And then even going into the Derby, I had 2 important clients that both honestly hated Brian.
The clients did?
Don't put Brian on my horses. I don't want Brian riding my horses. Why can't we get Ortiz? Why can't we get, this guy, that guy? And I kept saying, no, look, these horses run just as good or better for Brian every time. If you'll look at every time I take Brian off, put Brian back on, horse would run better. And I just stuck to my guns on both of them. And I said, look, Brian's who I ride. And I'm at a stage where I've got enough horses and I don't really have to.
And clients trust you enough.
Yeah, most of them. And then the funniest thing is that after he won the Oaks and the Derby, I got messages from both of them apologizing.
Oh, I bet.
Saying, I am so sorry.
I bet.
Let him ride anything.
Yeah, anything you want.
Yeah. So it took that weekend for them to finally see, oh yeah, he can get this done.
Yeah.
And that's been good. It's taken all the pressure off, and now they go, well, how come Brian's not on mine? How come Brian's not on mine?
I guarantee
Why are we riding Colby? Cool, Brian's out of town. Brian got another mount out of town. Oh,
I love it.
I want to even this weekend. Colby, I put Colby on all of them on Sunday, and I had a couple of clients. Can we get Gaffleone? Can we get one of the Ortiz? Who can we get? I said, we're riding Colby. And like, okay, so
they let you do your thing. All right, guys.
Colby's had some good wins for you. We had Elephants here, really ran great for you. He won the Indiana Filly 3-year-old stake last weekend. Under the palms.
Hey, Colby's numbers are pretty awesome.
Even his second fiddle, he's doing all right.
That's what I'm saying. He's doing okay here. All right, a couple more guys. We'll get you out of here. I can't thank you enough for your time. Any pre-race rituals? Do you guys have any pre-race routines? Are jockeys superstitious at all? Is there anything that you guys do pre-race?
You get some guys that are really superstitious. You'll find guys that won't step on cracks going to the paddock.
Okay, that's.
In my case, I'm not really into all this superstition stuff. Biggest routine is you just kind of read the form and go out there and just kind of try to prepare yourself as best as possible.
Gotcha.
And if you do that, then you go out there, and the biggest thing is you just got to know your horses.
Okay. Colby, anything?
No, that's pretty much it. You look at the form, and then you pretty much you want to ride the race that you want, and then also want to know what the next guy's plan on doing too.
Yeah.
Trying to just plan your race according to that.
All right. Well, what is the most challenging aspect of being a jockey the fans might not be aware of? So to add on that, how do you handle the physical and mental demands of the sport?
I think the most challenging part about riding is just the traveling. That's where it gets tough. You know, we're always on the move. We're always
with young families.
Got young families. You're always even when you're at Churchill, you're there for 6 weeks or whatever, and then you're at Ellis Park, and then you're getting on a plane. You're spending 4 months away from your family in the wintertime just to because you got to follow the circuits everywhere.
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest part about the job is just the traveling around.
Colby, anything physically?
No, traveling and just mentally, just keeping your business going.
Does riding beat you up at all?
Sometimes.
Has there ever been a horse that you're just like, oh my God, I don't want to ride that horse?
Oh yeah, no. There's sometimes you'll be in the post parade where they're just bouncing around and just slinging themselves around and throwing themselves all over the place, and it gets tiresome because you're sitting there and you're trying to hang on for 7 minutes, and then you got to load in the gate, and then you got to ride him around there in the race.
Yeah.
All right, that, and also when you get a horse that'll kind of want to lug out or not make the turns, that'll beat you up pretty good as well.
All right, I got to ask you guys this question. Kenny and I talked about this a little bit. He's got a good friend, an old football coach, a guy named Bill Parcells, that him and Kenny have kind of talked about this a little bit, but this fascinates me. So the football world is getting a lot more to where guys are in the quarterback's ears. Okay, so people are telling the quarterbacks where to go, where to look. I think there is a 15-second dead air time where they have to turn it off. They can't be telling them what's going on during the play, but apparently that's coming to where they might be able to tell them where to throw it during the play. Do you guys ever see, now I know there's electronic issues, do you guys ever see a day where somebody might be in your ear as you're riding?
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. See, Kenny likes the idea, by the way. Kenny's all for it. But you're thinking you wouldn't like that.
I've worked a few horses for guys that make you put the earpiece in, and they want to tell you, like, oh, go faster, go slower. Well,
I thought that wasn't legal.
They do it in the mornings.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
When you're working horses, some of the trainers do that. And I've had a couple guys having me do it. And I'm just like, dude, I'm trying to focus on just trying to get things done smoothly. And I got you in my ear. It's not like there's a gas pedal out there. You got to learn to put them in a rhythm where you can just do this, move here, move there.
It makes sense. Easy. Colby, you wouldn't like that either? No,
not at all. We pretty much, we have watches on our arms. We hit the pole, and then we know exactly how fast we're going. And I'd rather like that.
Kenny, it's coming.
Here's my vision.
It's coming.
Here's my vision on it. They choose who's on the radio.
There you go.
Well, yeah, because it could be a jockey. Or heck, Colby could be talking to Brian, or vice versa.
They choose.
Yeah, I mean,
preferably an experienced rider that you know, that you trust. I don't need to be giving you instructions on how to ride. But if Robbie were on the phone,
that'd be a big game changer.
What I would say, I do think that it will come one day, or I think it would be a good idea. Any time you think you can get a competitive advantage, all they would tell them was, look, the favorite stumbled leaving there. He's on your inside.
Yeah.
You might, make him go around or something like that, where you're not aware of the horse you're worried about.
Sure.
Or they might see the fractions in front and say, they're going along pretty quick. That's my vision of it.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
If you get a guy that knows, like, it's easy to watch a race, but if you get a guy that knows, that's done it and knows how a horse is traveling,
it's going to be a jockey. It's going to be somebody that knows the game. I would think.
Like I said, I wouldn't want to be involved in it. I wouldn't want his agent to be telling him how to ride. Like I said, I think that they would have to be very comfortable on who. It's probably no different than a car race.
Yeah.
In a race cars, and they're going so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm sure whoever's on the radio, I don't know how that works.
Well, they're in their ear.
You can use the same equipment.
Oh yeah.
And it works on how big's the oval at Indy?
They're pretty big. Sure. It's miles.
Yeah, 2.5 miles or something. And so whoever's on the radio is giving the driver instructions and letting him know where everybody is in the field and who he's got to take an aim at. And I think there's a future to it. I think it'll take a couple of racetracks that say we're going to try this. But right now we're doing the chiclet thing, which is, that's a GPS sits in the saddle, behind the saddle, and the GPS follows the horses and can tell you who ran the longest distances.
Right.
And so, and that's another thing that Brian's great about is cutting the corner, saving ground. I think he unconsciously saves ground. Am I right?
Yeah. It's
somebody yelled at him one day and told him to save ground, damn it. And he just does it all the time.
He just does it. Mm-hmm.
And I won't ride riders that don't save ground.
Right.
But the GPS coordinates will tell you to the foot who ran farther, and then players, and actually don't think they do a very good job presenting this information. The gamblers should have access to that information so that they realize who actually probably was the best horse.
Well, you've said several times in the Derby, the second and third horses ran a lot further than Mystic Dan did.
They did, and another race. When we lost the Travers, Fiercest ran further than us. Mm-hmm. He went wide. He was wider on the first turn, second turn. We were inside. He ran further than us. And everybody says, she could have got there. She could have. But on the Trackus, he was the fastest. He was the best horse.
Interesting.
And so I wasn't all that displeased with our run so much as, you like winning, but he ran a fabulous race, and you can see that in the technology. So the technology's coming. I think there'll be a day. It'll take somebody like me to probably push it along.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody that's progressive. Last question here, guys. To baby back off that a little bit. Anything else you guys see the horse racing, as far as your all's perspective, evolving in? How's the sport evolving?
You just like to see more fans come into it and just enjoy it. And another thing I noticed, I sat and talked with Jason Worth the other day when I was up in Saratoga, and he owned Dornack. Well, what he's proposing is that
decent baseball player.
Yeah, he's getting some more baseball players and celebrities in on horses, and then what he wants to do is sell off the shares to their fans. Yeah. So I think if you can get guys like that just get more people involved in the racing, it'll be.
Kenny, there's an idea. Yeah.
I've become friends with Jason. Well, we've kind of worked on trying to buy a horse or two together and it hadn't worked out, but we will.
Yeah, he's ate up with the
he's ate up, and that's what he was saying. He said he didn't know much about racing until after he retired from baseball and COVID hit, and he was bored playing golf with some of his buddies. Right. And they had horses. He was like, well, I want to get in on this. Yeah. And like he said, it was tough for him to get into racing because he didn't know any of the terminology. Yeah. So I think if we can make it to where we make things basic and get the casual fans in and let them know how to come to the racetrack and bet. And that's another thing with coming to the track. Before you even get in the front door, you got to pay to get in. You got to buy a program. We got to make better ways of making those things eligible for people for free. You don't go to a baseball game and have to pay for everything before you even place a $2 bet.
Good point.
Here's another one with Jason. So before the Travers, I said 200, I beat you straight up.
Okay. Did he do it?
Yeah, he did it. And then I also took the same bet with Brooke Smith, who was in on Sierra Leone.
Did he pay you?
Brooke hadn't paid me yet, but Jason paid me. He actually signed $100, one of the $100 bills for me.
That's cool.
I think I gave it to one of my grooms the other day for some cash. But I do think that would be a good evolution where you could bet head to head.
Yeah.
I really have always questioned why wouldn't the sport say, I understand that they want to bring money into the purse structures and they don't want people betting on horse racing outside of the pari-mutuels, but horse racing started, my horse is faster than your horse, how much you want to bet?
Yeah.
And then it changed into, well, you're a favorite and I'm not. And so the odds started taking.
Yeah.
And that's where the bookies in England came in.
Okay.
And then the French created parimutuel wagering. And that's what we use today in the United States is a tote system based on parimutuel where the odds are figured.
Sure.
And you get, longer shot and the less money that goes into the pool, the longer price of horse, the more money, the shorter price.
Yeah.
So, but I think head-and-head wagering
that would be interesting.
I think it would be prolific. I think it would change the game, but racetracks are going to say no. But I think if more people were doing it, why bet head-to-head with a guy when you can get 5-1 at the track?
Right.
But you're going to get more interest by guys playing head-to-head. And so I don't think the racing industry has really thought that through, that more interest is more important.
Yeah.
And there are not going to be that many head-to-head bets that take away from the pool. It actually will add to the pool because they're actually watching.
I love it. I think it's brilliant.
So
somebody needs to get Churchill Downs on the phone.
Got to buy a racetrack to do all this.
Yeah, I know. Churchill Downs runs the world here, though.
Yeah.
Got to get them involved. Kenny, anything I didn't ask these two that we need to ask before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I'm really glad they're here. Like I said, I can't answer a lot of the jockey questions, and hopefully we can bring some other guys in at some point in time.
Yeah, guys, I can't thank you enough. This has been a super treat for our listeners and myself, and really, really cool stuff. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you once again for listening to this episode of Horses Now. Thank you for tuning in and riding along with us. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. We've got plenty more insight, stories, and tips coming your way, so hit that subscribe button. And Kenny, till next time, we'll see you at the races.
See you at the races. Sonny, come on over here. Come on, Sonny. Come on. Up.
Good.
Up.
Everybody say hi to Sonny.